Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's brief video, I'm going to discuss Manchester United's financial situation with the Q3 earnings that have come in from the filings. I was waiting for this a couple of days ago, mentioned in a video that we want to see what it looked like when United made their filings for the third quarter, and it would tell us a lot about the financial situation and where things are at. Obviously, it's been a turbulent time. It's been an interesting time at Manchester United. All the changes that are in place. And as I was discussing in yesterday's video about Dave Brailsford stepping backwards, part of the feeling that is around and the intention here is that United may have finally reached a little bit of a point of, oh, calm down. Everything's okay. We're done with the big changes. We're done with the chaos. We're done with everything. And United can just settle into being a football club. Now, there are obviously, again, the owner issues, the debt, the things that shouldn't be there. But as far as the club being able to operate like a football club and do things the right way, the biggest factors were, one, balancing the books and getting United into a position where it isn't hemorrhaging money. Because even despite the debts, it was hemorrhaging money to the point that it was almost unbelievable. The books were not balanced. PSR was in danger, and United might have been in a situation where they could not actually buy further players to enhance the team after what have been two horrendous seasons. And of course, how do you do that and spend that money, right? Getting the right football structure in place and getting people in who know what they're doing so you don't keep wasting so much money. These are the biggest factors that they wanted to address. I feel that they've addressed it on the structural side of it. Let's take a look at the money because it is really, really rather interesting. And bear in mind, of course, these are to some degree, there's going to be some estimations in here just based on obviously everything that we can do. There's limitations to what we can discover, but there's a lot to be found in these filings. So Manchester United financials, are we still broke? This is the third quarter, 2024-2025. So this released today, but this is from through the end of 31 March. Okay, so just a bit through the season. Back end of 31 March. So starting at the top, the commercial revenue is up due to a new e-commerce model. I've mentioned this. This is in the filings. They implemented a new model way that they do things. It's in-house or however, and essentially they make more money from their commercial revenue. That's sales of things and all that kind of stuff. So the commercial revenue is up about 5 million. Broadcast revenue was up a bit due to a few more games and being still in Europa. There's some money there. Match day revenue was way up compared to the third quarter of 2024. Again, more matches, more hospitality, all of that. And overall, the match day revenue is significantly higher in that 9 months. Again, the biggest reason for that was United were still in Europa League, whereas last season, of course, we got knocked out of the Champions League, right? We got knocked out of the Champions League right off of the bat, and that was pretty much it, right? So some additional revenue, as we can see, of 24 million more. That is pretty big in the addition of everything put together. And that's one major factor. Now, what's not on here, that's 24 million. You can see this, by the way, that the last year, third quarter, we lost 66 million. This year, the operating profit is actually positive. We actually had a profit in this third quarter compared to a 66 million loss in the prior year. And you can see that again, revenues being up 24 million is a big factor, but not the only factor because it's 66. So minus 24, 42 million. There's still a massive swing there. And if you look at it on the year, for that 9 months, it went from a 37 million loss at that point to a 3 million loss at that point. So things are looking a little bit better, but there's other factors that are not showing up on here, but are in the filings. The operating costs themselves were down 20 million per quarter. That is an 80 million yearly cut in operating costs. What is this due to? Well, one, the wages on the players lowered a bit due to no Champions League, right? Compared to the prior quarter. I think that accounts for about maybe 5 to 10 million of that. There was some loans, Sancho, Rashford, some of those were loaned the prior year too. But there were some extra loans, like especially, Rashford, Antony, that we didn't have before. That probably saved us, I would say, 4 or 5 million there. And then there's the redundancies in the other part of it. There's probably near half of that operating cost cut of 10 million. Maybe it's 8 million or something like that during that period. Remember, there's more redundancies that aren't even factored into this as of yet. So a huge reduction in operating costs, an increase in revenue, and the loss swings. Overall, it is a huge, huge swing where United are actually looking near break even for the year so far, going off this operating profit or loss. They're at a minimal level for the 9 months, and we're actually slightly positive. Earnings before interest, taxes, deductions, and amortization is higher. Again, not the most meaningful figure because amortization is one of the biggest expenses at a football club. But the higher this number is, just bear this in mind, the higher this number is, the more you can spend in the market because that's what amortization is. Ta-da! So it's not that meaningful because if you have a ton of money you have to spend on players, then you're spending that. That's amortization. That gets deducted from there. United spend a lot. But essentially this means they can have 150 million in spend based on this year or close to that, but not exactly. If we go to the fourth quarter and we predict what next quarter will look like so we can see where we might end for the year. If we look at the last year, fourth quarter, our commercial revenue will probably be up. We'll be releasing a kit here in June. I would expect we're going to get a lot of sales on that, especially since we already have Cunha in and probably announced in the new kit. Broadcast will be up because we still have Europa League games and we reached the final of the Europa League. This will be offset a little bit by a loss in prize money and broadcast share due to being in 15th versus 8th. Now, there's a bigger gap between, I think, 8th and 4th or something, or 2nd, than it is 15th and 8th, but regardless, we'll probably see a little bit of a decrease compared to quarter four last year in that overall broadcast and match day broadcast revenue will probably be around the same. It could be a little lower, it could be a little higher, but it'll be close to the same. Match day should be up though because we did have more games. The Europa League games, hospitality, prices, things like that. So we should actually see a little bit up on 2024, maybe closer to our 2023 levels in general, right? So you would expect then operating costs would still be down. So maybe a little bit more in revenue again, but expenses lower. So some of our one thing that might offset it a little bit is it's June right now. We're in the fourth quarter still. If we're spending a bit on Cunha and we have to register him and pay some taxes and pay some fees and pay a little bit of amortization, same for Mbumo and same for any other deals we get done before July 1st, we're going to have to amortize and pay some of that money. Now, amortization is daily. So if we are buying and registering a player, say June 15th for 60 million, we're going to be due about 500,000 in amortization over those 2 weeks. So not massive amounts here, but we could see with all the things that go into signing players, maybe a 5 to 10 million in bump up of expenses if we get Cunha and Mbumo and potentially another. But overall, United could be profitable. What the hell? So if we look at it, last year, fourth quarter, we lost 32 million. This year, we didn't buy anybody on transfers last year, mind you. So, and maybe we're getting a little more prize money. So, but with the cuts, with the swings, with all of it, we could be ever so slightly profitable. We could even be in the black fully. And that might mean for the year, where we're looking at it now, we're only down 36.9. No, we're only down 3.2 million for the 9 months. If we can turn this operating from 32 and swing it by another 40 to 60 like we did in the third quarter, which is probably likely, United might actually be profitable. Profitable is a good thing in this sense. There's other expenses, as you can see. There's other loss, factors that come into play, other things that you're spending on. it doesn't mean there's extra money and that the owners are taking profit. What it means is United likely in a situation where they can actually handle the PSR problems that are going on, where they're actually not so limited by PSR and where the books are balanced. So we're not spending more than we're making. And that means when we get to a position where we're in Europe, for example, get back into Europe, the revenue goes up, we're able to spend all that money and make big spendings on transfers and things like that. So what it means, if we take the prior years, 2023, 29 million loss, 2024, 130 million loss. My previous analysis was that we could lose 120 million this season. This was seemingly backed up by the Athletic report the other day, estimated at 141. With deductions, United could probably lose 120 million in Supply, but we may lose little to none. We may be around zero or lose just very, very little. However, we will lose some, mind you, because there's other expenses at play there that may not account for PSR, but they will be losses. However, United are expected to then lose about 80 million next season due to complete lack of European football. Not necessarily 80 million net, probably 80 million gross on the revenues, probably 40 to 50 million net. Due to lack of European football, we won't get the Europa League games. We won't get Europa League revenues. We won't get match day revenues. It's a fair chunk of money, and there's expenses associated with it, and the salaries will drop even further. So, yeah, we will lose next year. We are going to be down. This might be our best financial year in a long time, but we're going to be down next year. However, yeah, so we can't just go crazy because we are expected to lose money next year, and that'll put us back towards the edge, right? Even if we go spend a bunch of money because we have a zero loss, then it'll put us back towards the edge because we'll be losing a 29 million loss year and maybe gaining an 80 million loss year, basically. So we do need to balance new signings. Truthfully, in simple terms, United could probably spend 200 million net with no problem right now, more than the 125 we budgeted for. However, without sales, it could mean we're in a situation where if we miss on Europe next year, then we'll be saying, shit, we can't spend anything, right? So we can't miss out on Europe if we spend all that money. Again, the cash flow is a bit of a bigger concern. The deals must be structured right. So point being on this is, look, they do a lot of worst case scenario kind of planning. If we go spend 200 million net right now, we can, but if we miss Europe somehow, again, then it's time, we're going to have to start selling. We're going to be fully sell to buy from day one, and there's obviously further disastrous consequences to that as well. So yeah, but cash flow is a bigger thing in there. There's not a ton of cash in the company. There's not a ton of space on the credit line, though it hasn't been drawn down further. We have paid a ton in amortization through the season, so we're probably not in a terrible position. But the deals do have to be structured. Like we're not in a position where we can go pay 60 million up front for somebody. There's not really just the cash for that. I mean, technically we could, but we definitely need sales in order to do that. So if we look at it, we've got our Mbumo and our Cunha at the estimated 125 that they're going to cost together. Then you look at a striker like Gyökeres remaining. We could do it right now. If the payment terms are right, it's doable. But they do want to be responsible because we really do need these sales and wages off Anthony, Rashford, Sancho in particular, in order to ensure that we save that money, that we're balanced in the future. And their wage savings are even more important. Cash flow, not having to be outlaying that money all the time, reducing our expenses next season to balance with the new signings that we just brought in, and to ensure that we aren't on the edge moving forward. So really, if we were to go buy a Gyökeres today and not sell these players, we'd probably be in a bit of trouble next summer. We'll be fine right now. But if we don't get Europe, we're in huge, huge trouble next summer. That's essentially would be the issue. Now, there's more savings in place and things like that. So I may be overstating it because, frankly, the financial turnaround they've put in place, we could probably go through near disaster scenarios and end up with money to spend. And I think that's kind of the point, because we want to get back to being able to spend more than anyone else in Europe on transfers, like we should be able to. We want to be able to have the most expensive squad in Europe, which is probably going to be necessary to win titles, even if you're spending well. So we may end up in a situation with the further redundancies and things where, regardless of what happens, we're able to just go spend pretty significantly, right? That's where we may be. That's what might happen. But worst case scenario planning is always the way that that I look at, is always the way that we put things in place, is always the way that we are operating under Ineos. So they're going to want to move these guys on to be sure not only can we spend now, but we have the ability to go into next summer properly planning and go through the season regardless of what may come. You never know what other expenses are there. In addition, we want a stadium. We want other projects to get going, and it's important for United to be in a good cash flow and financial situation to do that. The sale of Garnacho is on top of that. That would be a huge one because of the profitability of the sale. It would unlock significant PSR space and spending power. Realistically, if we moved those players on plus Garnacho, it would take us out of any PSR danger no matter what happens. PSR becomes a thing of the past. Our operational costs are set. Everything is rolling along smoothly. And we would basically be replacing and removing big loss years with break even to profitable seasons. Then cash flow is the only remaining barrier. So that's a big one that could make a significant difference, where it just takes us out of trouble. Now, being smart with your spending, being disciplined with your spending, being good with the money that is going out is, of course, always important. We don't want to get taken advantage of again. We don't want to be crazy with our spending and put ourselves back in a bad position. We don't want to break the wage structure and be going for 400,000 or 500,000 a week players before we're consistently seeing top revenues, right? Before we're consistently Champions League every year, winning titles, winning things, all of that. Because we don't want to save it and then just crash it again at the same time, right? We need to be smart about all of this. Not being in PSR danger doesn't mean we should put ourselves back in PSR danger. It means we want to have a balanced book where we never have to worry about it again, and where we're not constantly pumping money in, but that we can actually put money towards. Because realize every time, let's say Sir Jim or whatever had to put more money into the club to keep it functional. Every time they do that, that's money that ideally should be spent on infrastructure. That's money that ideally should be spent on the stadium. That's money that should ideally be spent on other things. So the books need to be balanced, just in a sense of, for just smartness. The Manchester United should not be in financial ruin under any circumstances, even without owner investment. When you think about how big the club is, the fan base, everything that's in it, it should not be in ruin. And that is what they're trying to avoid. So it looks like we're on the right track. It looks like things are going the right way. We need to stay good on the wages, keep them in a reasonable range. We need to move some players off, but the money will be there to get transfers done in addition. We really could be in a situation where we don't have to sit here next season, through the season, saying, well, what about PSR? Well, what about PSR? It's more just they're going to go at it and be smart about spending what they want to spend. It'd be nice. I don't love talking about it. It is boring to me, even though I kind of like finance. It is boring to me to constantly be talking about PSR and going over that and having that be the big thing and blah, blah, blah. We don't have to really hear it from Madrid. We don't really have to hear it from City. We don't really have to hear it from Liverpool. Look at what they're doing right now. That's where we need to be. And so in order to do that, it's not just about being successful. It's balancing this while maintaining some responsibility temporarily. So that's what they're doing. And if it's done right, then by next summer, we get Europe, we're probably never talking about it again. And that's what we need. That's what we want. Okay? So hopefully this is a decent summary of this. I've got plenty more to come for you today in talking about different things going on at United. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. See you in the next one.